What we're going to do next is think about what happens if we have a portfolio of these stocks. So now what we're going to do is we're going to have two stocks. We're going to have X1 and X2, and they're just like X1. In other words, they have a 0-2 payoff, which is 50-50. We're going to put half our money in X1 and half in X2. So these are like tossing coins. If we toss two coins, how many states do we have? What are the outcomes if you toss two coins? 4. So we have two tails, a tail and a head and a tail, and two heads. What's our portfolio payoff in each of those states? You get two tails, you get how much? 0, 0, so we multiply half times 0 plus half times 0, which is 0. Tail head is a half times 0 plus half times 2, which is 1. Head tail is the other way around, half times 2 plus a half times 0, which is 1. And two heads is a half times 2 plus a half times 2, which is 2. Let's start out with a case where we have 0 correlation. In that case, what's the probability? Okay, we've got independent coins, so 0 correlation. What's the probability of each of the 4 states? If you toss two independent coins, it's going to be a half times a half, which is a quarter. What's the mean? Well, again, it's 1 quarter times 0 plus a quarter times 1 plus a quarter times 1 plus a quarter times 2 is 1. What's happened to the variance? What's the deviation from the mean in the tail head and head tail state? 0. So what do you think's happened to the variance? It shrunk because now we've got a quarter times 0 plus a quarter times 2. The variance is going to be a half. So the variance shrink with independent coins because half the time they just cancel out. Does everybody see that? That's the basic idea of diversification. Now we could have a negative correlation of 1, and in that case, what would we have? So negative correlation of 1, if I tell you that you get a tail first, what's the other one? Head. So what's the probability of two tails? 0. And what's the probability of two heads? 0. And tail head? 1. Half and a half. So what's the mean now? 1 again. What's the variance now? Okay, so the question is, why is the probability 0.5? Well, what minus 1 correlation means is that they're opposite. So when one's high, the other's low. When the other one's low, the second one's high. So what that means is that if you get a tail for the first one, what must the second one be? Head. The probability of tail for the first one is 50-50, so it's a half. So the probability of tail head is a half. The probability of a head is a half. And once we know it's a head, it's a tail for the second half. So the variance has gone down to 0. So by having this -1 correlation we've got, when one is high, the other is low, and vice versa, we've got rid of the risk. If we go to rho equals +1, what are the probabilities? +1 means what? The first one's a tail. What's the second one?
Tail.
Also a tail. Can we have a tail head?
No.
So 2 tails probability, that's 0.5. Then we've got 0, 0, and 0.5. The mean, again, if you check it, is 1. What's the variance? It's just like our previous example. We basically see 1 coin, one stock or 1 coin. So the variance is 1. So as we go from +1 down to 0, what's happening? The risk is going down. What we're getting is more and more cancelling. And then as we keep on going, when we end up at -1, we've got complete cancelling. So clearly the correlation or the covariance is going to be very important for the portfolio risk. The more negative it is, the lower it is, the less risky is the portfolio. Does everybody see that? Now, the other way to get rid of risk here is to add more stocks. So if we have more independent stocks, suppose we had 4 stocks or coins that were independent, what's the probability of 4 tails? 4 tails, what's the probability of 4 tails? 1 over 16. What's the probability of 4 heads? 1 over 16, the same. Everything else, are you going to get cancelling out? In other words, some heads and some tails. Yeah, you're going to get 3 heads and 1 tail, 3 tails and 1 head. Where are you going with respect to the mean? You're going closer to mean. What's happening to the variance? It's shrinking. If we go to 100 coins, what's happening? How many are we going to get most of the time? 50 heads, 50 tails, 49, 49. But we're going to not be, chance of 45, 55 is pretty low. So again, what's happening to the variance? It's shrinking down. And there's something called the law of large numbers. And what that says is that as n goes to infinity, what happens to the variance? It goes to 0. So that's the second way. If you just take lots of independent risks, you get rid of it. And that's what was going on in our motivation examples. You were diversifying away the risk. So that's the basic idea. Any questions before we go? Okay, well, have a great weekend, and I'll see you on Tuesday.